Trigger warning, mentions of suicide and suicide loss throughout the episode. If you need support resources, you can find them in our show notes.
Welcome, friends of Jack Amplified. Thanks for joining us again this week. As always, we have an incredible guest that will join us in just a minute. This week, we want to focus a little bit about Jack.org's annual event, the Jack Ride. It's an incredible event, and we're going to talk with one of our participants and someone where mental health is very close to his heart. This event, although there are a lot of bikes involved, usually over 1,000 people riding, is really about getting in movement. But what it is more about is a day of hope. We come together in Caledon and across the country because you can get in movement wherever you are. And why do we do that? Because every one of us, in some way or form, has been affected by either ourselves or someone in our lives by mental illness, mental health challenges, or sadly by suicide. So it's a day of hope. It's a day of coming together to say we can and we will do better through the programs, the early intervention and prevention programs of Jack.org. Jack Ride is so special and has been going on for years and years and years. It's a beautiful ride. But hey, if you can't ride, and let me tell you, I'm a little ride challenged myself because it's a tough course. It's a really good course. We have rides for all different levels. I'm going to do an easier ride. But if you can't ride, you can walk, you can run, you can get your local spin studio involved and do a day where you do a challenge, and that money goes towards Jack Ride. There's so many different ways to provide hope for young people across the country in this time of mental health need. Now, with that out of the way, I want to introduce our host. That's a bit of a lie because I'm not going to introduce them, because who's the best person to introduce themselves but the person themselves, because they could tell us all about themselves and their journey. So welcome, Kyle, to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thanks, Michael. I appreciate you guys having me on, and yeah, very excited to be chatting with you and all the fine folks out there interested in the great work that you and your team do with Jack. Uh, Introducing myself, I suppose, in the spirit of the conversations around youth mental health, I will say that I'm a grown-up kid from St. Stephen, New Brunswick, from from the rural Maritimes. I I mean, it's why we're here to kind of chat through a little bit of what led us to this moment in this conversation.
Yeah.
But as a kid growing up in the rural Maritimes as a young man and a boy in this community of St. Stephen, I silently struggled with anxiety and OCD, two diagnoses that I got. After I went off to university, throughout my youth, I didn't have the people around me or the language to really articulate what I was going through and the mental health challenges I was facing as a young man growing up. And those challenges led to some ups and downs, a bit of a roller coaster of experience throughout my youth, and gave me a particular appreciation for the space that organizations like Jack.org have when it comes to supporting youth as they're navigating not only the just kind of, I suppose you could say, kind of traditional highs and lows that you go through as being a young person growing up and just navigating who I am in this world, but then also the highs and lows that can come with adding that experience, through the lens of mental illness and or mental distress. So I've been on a bit of a path of leveraging this experience that I had as a youth through sharing stories and experiences that I've had. I created a podcast back in 2019 called Life's a Wreck. A big fan of the podcasting space myself, and I had an opportunity, as after going through a few suicide crisis moments myself, to share my experiences in a way that felt authentic to me. And I think that the podcasting format is great for that long form content, being able to just sit down and I'm a big believer in just kind of that one man show dialogue of just sitting back and kind of letting that stream of consciousness flow. And so podcast gave me a space to kind of talk through these very complicated experiences that I had. And as I started to share my experiences, I had other people from my community and from my life want to share their experiences as well. And so the podcast evolved from me just sharing what I was going through to sharing the experiences of others, and then eventually sharing the experiences and stories of people across this great country from every different background, every different walk of life, every different level of professional, whether it just be, and truly, I've sat down with like some of my neighbors and friends and family growing up. And then I've also sat down with some of the preeminent mental health researchers and thought leaders in the country and decision makers and people, professional athletes and high performers, and some really fantastic people who have taken time to share their perspective and add their voice to this kind of national dialogue, which has been really special. And yeah, for the last, ever since 2019, I've really tried to use my platform and the story that I have and the story that so many other people have to champion a world where we try to destigmatize mental health conversations, particularly amongst Canadian youth. So the opportunity to kind of jam on this topic with you and kick the ball around a little bit. I'm pretty stoked to be here.
And we are super happy to have you. Now, listen, we are trying to destigmatize around mental health, but I want to talk about a stigma too, because I think you actually feed into it. Some stigmas might be true, and that is that people from out east are just such friendly, wonderful people. I don't know. I think people from the East Coast, they just have and I'll tell you a funny story of like not by being in Halifax. And it's funny that people from Ontario and Toronto will talk about this all the time. When you go across the road, people stop, like not at a stoplight, and they let you go across. And we're so used to people actually stepping on the gas in Toronto who run faster. You're like, what game are you playing here? What's happening as we cross this road, right? But it's wonderful, and just that warmth that East Coasters. I'm
Yeah,
going to play into that stigma because you exude that warmth, and we're happy
thank
to
you.
have you here. You've been very open with all your platforms about kind of your rock bottom moment in university,
Yeah.
right? So how did that lead? How did you go from there to a world of advocacy and eventually to the movement
Mm.
for Jack.org?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think what's important to mention is that crisis moment was actually my second crisis moment. I had a suicide crisis moment back in high school that I that I honestly I think that I had two very different suicide crisis moments growing up. The one that I had in high school, after years of feeling that weight of living with undiagnosed mental illness and not having the resources or understanding of how to not only navigate that road, but just who to talk to or even the language to use to communicate what I was going through. As much as and I'll tip my fisherman's cap to you and appreciate the kind words about the Maritimes because growing up like that was the thing, rural New Brunswick, some of the nicest people I've ever
Yeah.
met came from the community that I was around, and truly some of the most thoughtful, kind, generous, understanding people that I've ever had the fortune to meet. Um, and yet throughout all of this, I still grew up in locker rooms surrounding. I played a lot of sports growing up, and I grew up in this very kind of hyper masculine culture in a way of don't be a blank, man up. That's not what men do, and that wasn't necessarily perpetuated. I'm very fortunate it wasn't perpetuated behind closed doors in my household, but it certainly was amongst other peers and young men as we're in the football locker room and we're banging our heads into the cement wall trying to get psyched up for the game against the regional rival or whatever. And then you don't necessarily feel like because you embody that traditional and masculine mold, I didn't really feel like I could talk about it, or I didn't feel like I wanted to. And so back in high school, I went through after just living with this for so long and again feeling especially with the intrusive thoughts. I mean, I had terrible intrusive thoughts and still do surrounding harm to both myself and others. And it, when you're a young person who has all of these things going right for them on the outside world, and then the inside world is so there's so much turmoil and it feels so, for a lack of a better word, evil when you don't know what's going on. I just thought I was a terrible person, and so when I was in high school going up through, I had this feeling of I had this feeling of like that I was a character, and that like if people ever got to know who I was, like the truth to who I was this like evil, disgusting human being, and everything that I was just doing on the day-to-day basis was just to create this character of like this likable, charismatic young man who was just trying to kind of like fumble his way through his adolescence, and the weight of that really got to me in high school, and the reason that I had a second crisis moment and that my story didn't stop there, was actually, and to be truthfully honest, it was because I thought that I was such a bad person. True, like deep down, I thought that these intrusive thoughts, this anxiety, I was such a terrible person that I didn't deserve the relief of suicide. And that's how I saw it at the time. And so I had so much self-loathing, that I decided that what I deserved because I was such a bad person was to suffer, and so I had to keep going. And so the second time that this weight, got to me when I was in university, I I had started to I kind of had this moment of, again, that feeling, that same weight, that feeling I can't do this anymore. And when I got to university, I had these feelings of like the only thing that I can feel is terrible. I can't really feel anything except for terrible. And then when I had this second suicide crisis moment, I realized that, well, shoot, like, man, maybe I am capable of experiencing extremes. And if I'm capable of experiencing this extreme and this extreme bad for this prolonged period of time, well, then, like, maybe if again, this kind of ever balancing scale, if there's good, there's bad, if black, there's white, um, you know, maybe that just means that I can experience things deeply, extremely. And maybe that's actually a bit of a foothold in this kind of free fall that I found myself in. Maybe I can actually kind of stick my hand out and grab onto something and be like, well, man, I'm actually curious. I'm actually capable of experiencing some really, profound pain, but maybe within that actually exists the, capacity to just experience things extremely, which maybe after a lot of work, I can actually experience the other side of the spectrum. And so that moment of even just that thought that like just flittered through my, kind of floated through my brain, and latching onto it amongst all of the other kind of storm clouds and everything else going on, was one of the first moments in my entire life of self care. It was this, like, gave myself this just one opportunity to think positively about who I was as a person. I didn't just think I was capable of all these bad things. For just a moment, I thought I was capable of something good, and that's as much as it took for me to like get a hold on where I was. And then from there, I figured I got nothing to lose. I'm at rock bottom. I might as well, put my feet in the ground, dust myself off a little bit, and see if there's actually something above me. And from there, I started to, really seriously look into therapy and go through what I was going through. And I mean, hell, we could get into my first therapy appointment, which was a real trip. But the whole process since then was just it was slow and it was painful, and I fell back down the wall plenty. But through calluses and a lot of making a fool of myself, I started to get things on a better track, and I just realized, how much good stuff is out there. I mean, I sounds like you've been to the East Coast, like a good, feed of fish and chip after a long day, and the sun on your skin sitting on the Halifax boardwalk. That's a pretty good day. And so I just started to see the good things out there, and fell in love with the good things, and fell in love with the good, the bad, the ugly, everything worth celebrating. And um, I don't know, man. I just started to see that, like, it didn't take much. And I think that that's this is a long-winded answer to your question, but to bring it all back to Jack, I didn't take much. Like, honestly, to set me on a path that has allowed me to be a better partner and son and friend to myself, and to, possess an identity that I'm really proud of, and I get to live through every day. It didn't take much. It took a moment. And so I think that so much of, the work that we do, I'm not trying to change anybody's life. I'm not trying to, create overwhelming evidence that you got to get your life on a better path or anything like that. I'm just trying to, like, stay in the game long enough that maybe something I say, whether it's offhanded or intentional, is that one thing that some kid who's in the same shoes that I grew up in grabs onto, and goes, oh shit, maybe there is more to my story. And I think that Jack, I think, embodies so much of how I see my journey and how I see helping other, young people across this country. And I commend you guys for the work that you do. And I'm just really fortunate to be a part of it.
As we are to have you leading the way, which is amazing. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing as well. Now, you talked about in your intro, you have a podcast, and your podcast is all about authenticity, right? Why do you
Yeah.
think people, especially young men, of course, find it so hard to be authentic about their struggles until they see someone else go first. And we've seen this kind of talked about, and we've seen whether it be mental health or sexuality or in sport, especially. And we just see like the big Canadian thing right now, of course, is this show Heated Rivalry that talks about how do you be
Sure,
authentic
yeah.
and be right. So why do you think that's so difficult?
It's such a good question. And honestly, this one question could be a whole episode in and of
Yeah.
itself. Um, I mean, there are so many different things that come to mind. I think, man, eh, I mean, we could toss like I'll toss the kind of culture thing out there, and then we can really pick it apart. Maybe like I think that there, I think that like when you're a young person, there is so much of your identity that feels uncertain. And I think that that just goes for anybody. And as you should. I mean, that is what it means to grow up. That is what it means to like progress through life is to like further identify on a daily basis or weekly or whatever who you are and where your place is in this world. And I don't think we ever really figure that out. I mean, I've got mentors and grandparents and people in my life that are, much older and they still to this day talk about they have no idea what they're doing. And I don't think that we ever really know. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, maybe resonates there a little bit there with Michael as well. And that's the thing is like I don't think we ever figured that out. But I think when you're young, there is this pressure, this social pressure, and whether it comes from social media or medias in general, or whether it comes from kind of traditional cultural norms of like, I mean, the question of like something as small as asking the grade 11 student, where are you going to go to university and what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Like, I mean, you think about this idea, and that was like growing up in a very like what you kind of use the bunny ears here, but a bit of traditional upbringing in the rural Maritimes. It's like you started talking about that when you were like in grade 9. It was like as soon as you got to high school, it's like, well, who are you? What do you want to be? And all this kind of stuff. And so you've got these people that you look up to. It's teachers, it's caregivers, it's friends, and whoever who are asking you to identify. Who are asking you to say, who are you? And in this grand scheme of life, these little we are little specks of sand in time, and we're trying to define this person and kind of have them narrow this down. And so I think that when you're going through this, particularly as young men, there is this, okay, well, I want to identify as soon as I can. And so you turn to people with very clear identities. I'm fascinated by the rise and I suppose not necessarily the rise because it's always been very prevalent, but the kind of like perpetual cycle that exists within that kind of like what is described as like the manosphere content that's regularly circulated amongst groups of young men, and I think that so often we have something called I really find fascinating the significance quest theory, which is this idea that as we all as human beings have a desire to matter. We want our essence in this world to have some impact. We want it to matter. I think that that's what we always talk about, particularly in mental health. We want to be enough, right? We want to matter. And so when you're young and when you have this like very mercurial understanding of like what it means to be you, and then all of a sudden you have people who say, well, if you want to be of value, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And you need to fit these very, traditional norms or these hyper masculine norms or these toxic masculine norms. That is how you're going to matter. And I think that, like, through so many different ways, it's spread around peer groups in so many different ways. I mean, don't get me started on social media algorithms right now. I mean, any young man can get on social media and within a few seconds is being bombarded with, content about hypersexualized behavior and violence towards women and minorities and people who don't look like you, and then all of a sudden you have that being shared between friend groups, and now that's the thing where if you engage with, you get acceptance from the people around you and your peers, and now all of a sudden that's kind of cool in a way, and it's cool to be edgy and it's cool to identify as being outside the norm and being this kind of trailblazer in some ways. I think that there's a million different, issues that we currently have. I'm actually doing a talk at a high school later this week, and one of my kind of key to a group of young boys, and one of my key kind of conversation points about taking better care of yourself is choose your role models with intention. You are being, kind of thrown as coal into this big machine that is social media and all these things. And I think we need to be very intentional even at a young age, and we need to like uh, both take responsibility as adults, but then also teach our young boys how to be intentional with the people that they choose to admire. And so I think that plays a significant role as well. And then, also the other thing of like, what do you do with pain as a young boy? I think that, is again, this, you're growing up, you make mistakes. Michael, I can't tell you the amount of time I still to this day on a daily basis step on my shoelaces and fall on my face. Like I make mistakes all the time. But when you're a kid, and especially when this, like, again, your identity is forming, you don't want your identity to be that of a failure or that of somebody who is like fallen down or is a goof or is an idiot or whatever. And so there's so much pressure that like during that time specifically, now I love messing up. It's my favorite thing in the world. It teaches me all these lessons. I get to grow. I get to, learn new things. It introduces me to new people. You just get an opportunity to be empathetic with yourself. It's fantastic. But at that point, it's so scary and daunting,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
seems terrifying. So I mean, there's a million different things we can point to, but it's one hell of a conversation.
Well, I'll tell a quick funny story around that. So I'm in grade 9. We have I grew up in Niagara, and so rowing was a big thing, right? So there's tryouts, but it's grade 9, and when I went to school, it's grade 13, right? So a 5 year age span. I'm in there, and after we do this workout, it's pretty like we're not on the water yet. We're just working out, and everyone hits the showers, and I am terrified because I am not really a man at this point. There's men in there, and there's like people shaving outside. I'm like, all right, just play it cool, Braithwaite. Just play it cool.
Yeah.
So I go in, I use the shower, everything's going. I step out of the shower, at my towel around me, wipe out, my towel goes flying, and I fall and hit my head on the floor. And so
Oh,
I'm lying naked on the floor in front of and everyone. Of course, now the tension is I'm like my worst nightmare, and I was thinking like, please
terrifying.
let. And my thought was like, please let me like just black out so I don't have to be like
Yeah.
conscious for this. And again, you know what? And in your mind, you said this. Did anyone really care? And they're like, well, whatever. I think a few people laughed because it was pretty funny, spastic movement, but no one cared. But to me, it was horrifying, right? As a
Yeah.
young person, those moments you think everyone is, focused and doing that when really everyone's got their own stuff going on and they're not really paying attention. But to the point around kids too, when you talk about, we talk about this a lot at Jack.org, is you often, although it's not rational, think you're alone in this, right? So you're like, I'm feeling
Mm.
this, I'm feeling this. And when you do finally have that courage to say to a buddy or someone you trust, say, I'm feeling really anxious. And they say, yeah, me too. Or something, you know what I mean? You're
Mm.
like, wow. So I'm not, this is not a me thing. This is,
Yeah.
and just knowing that others, you're not alone and others are going through it is a huge weight, right?
A huge weight. My God, we talk about the first time I went to therapy. That was when I was in university and decided to go to the free counseling center that Ryerson at the time, TMU, offered. And I told myself going into this appointment, I was like, I'm going to just like let the dam break. I'm just gonna like let it all out. I've already kind of started this like journey of like, who cares? I got nothing else to lose. Kind of this this very like cavalier attitude of like how I'm gonna approach this thing. And I sat there and I like for the, it was an hour long session, and she introduced herself and I introduced myself, and then basically she said, all right, we're off to the races. And I talked for 56 minutes. Like it took us up to like 1 minute to our time. And after I said all this stuff, I sat back, and it was the first time that I'd really like shared pretty much everything. There's a couple of things I kept to myself, but I shared 99% of the things that I was going through. And I sat there and I went, any second, the cops are going to burst in. My parents are going to say, shame on you. My friends are all going to like, whatever. But I just thought this person in front of me was going to say, like, was going to be scared of me. Because again, I kind of bore this part that I thought was so scary. And she said, I'll never forget it till the day that I die, Michael. She looked at me and she just goes, oh, that sounds really hard. And I mean, we didn't have much time left, but for the 1 minute that we had left, I bawled my fucking eyes out. I cried and cried and cried. And I was like, because that's all I needed to hear. Like, years,
And it
years of
was, and
suffering.
it is hard. Yeah.
and it's so, oh my God, it was all I needed to hear. And it just totally, like, there was this like little, and I'm such a believer that we carry around every version of ourselves, that like that little boy still very much lives within me. Like I am my younger self is me. I'm also my old man self, and he lives in here too. And and that little boy like was just so like happy and like, oh my God, like yeah, it is really hard. And that was like, that was what it was. And then the funny thing was, to even build on this, is that after I started my podcast, I will never forget this as well. After the very first episode went out, it was like a 30-minute episode of me just kind of talking about like what I wanted this episode, like this podcast to be. It was like I barely scratched the surface of like what I was going through. I had one of the most traditionally masculine dudes that I went to high school with, who again was just like that archetype that you just outlined, where he had like a
Oh
full
yeah.
bushy beard in grade 12, and he was like captain of the football team,
Yeah.
and he was a grown man at like 17 years old, and or 16 or 17, and he reached out and he said, hey man, I really appreciate you sharing what you're going through. I just wanted to let you know that hearing you, and he sent me in this in like an Instagram DM. So I just wanted to let you know that like what you went through, I feel like I'm going through some of the same things. And I think that I might try out that therapy thing that you talked about. And it was
Wow.
just like, and it was just one of those things where I was like, it does, again, it comes back to that it doesn't take much. But yeah, just hearing somebody say, shit, I'm going through this, and you can still see them living a life and like things move forward and life progresses. Oh my God, it's so important.
But beyond that, you brought this up earlier, right? Around you don't know what, and I'm ashamed to say that of the people I know that we've lost by suicide, a good number of them have said the same phrase. There's no way. How could that person ever be? They were the life of the party.
Yeah.
They were so
Yeah.
much fun. They were laughing all the time. Well, of course they were. That's one side we saw. That's what they showed. That's what they wanted you to see. And it's just, for us, like the people around them, they think there's no way that
Yeah.
person could be suffering, or because these kind of masks that we wear, right? And it's just, and so the the learning coming out of that is to try and see beyond that, and that we're all human, and despite it may not be right on the surface that you'll see that, don't make assumptions that these are
Yeah.
the happiness you see out there is 24/7.
No kidding. I know I mean, that was why I named the cast Life's a Wreck. Because it was, and that was always my thing, was that like I wanted to celebrate the wreckage. I wanted to celebrate disaster. And it was because like I wanted people to just have a space where like just for a moment they could just let that guard down a little bit, and try to take that mask off and just know that like, hey, Kyle talks about this stuff so much, and this is like kind of, this is, the way that he sees it. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to like feel like I can also kind of share in this moment of like, hey, I'm also like almost kind of like whispering like out of the side of your mouth, like, I'm also a disaster. Like I'm also a wreck. And I think that like, inherently we are like, oh my God, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world, and I think that there's a lot of nasty stuff out there. But I think and I think that like in our own ways, in small ways, but in sometimes big ways, whatever, like we are all wrecks. Like there is a lot that we are imperfect and unpolished, and things just bang up against each other, and it's a collision course, not just this like very flowy exterior that floats through life. Like there is moments of friction. um and yeah, I just think that that's it's so tough. And I know, and those, especially when you're having conversations around suicide, and it is a shared experience amongst people who have been around this space for a while, I find, and who have spent time around, whether it's people in their own life who have lost their lives to suicide, or whether it's people that they know, or people that they've advocated for, or families of people who have lost their lives to suicide. Like again, it comes up time and time again. And I think that just giving people any kind of permission, and for what it's worth, because that's the thing, is like, who am I to give anybody permission to be themselves? Like I just want people to know that if they choose to be themselves, and if they choose to just showcase a little bit of that unpolished interior, that like that unpolished interior is still going to be appreciated as an interior. I think that human beings are miracles, works of art. I think that God, the tough stuff is the stuff that makes us, right?
Mm.
It's the brush strokes on the tapestry. So I think that it's like, to be able to see how painting was painted, you're like, oh, that's neat. Like, isn't that cool? And it's not always cool. Sometimes it's a really dark canvas, but it's like, ah, but there's still nuance there, and there's still a lot to be
Mm.
really appreciative of.
It,
Yeah, man, yeah,
it's tough to get there. I mean, I could tell you in early
so
days,
tough.
when I was in therapy, like the whole trust thing is that when I went in there, to be able to trust the therapist enough to show, because you don't want people to see that ugly side, some of the things that you've done or that's happened, or
100%.
talk about, right, stuff you're not proud of or whatever it might be in therapy. And I can remember going in, and I'm like, oh, I hope the therapist likes me, right?
Oh, good
So
one. Yeah.
if I tell them this or that, there's no way they're gonna be like, "Whoa, this person's awful," or this, like, I can't believe they thought that. I thought they were a solid person or whatever it would be. So I wasted a lot of time. And again, therapist wasn't a dummy. Like, drop it. Like, stop trying to get me to, like, stop telling me what I want to hear. You're wasting your time. And I get paid for my time regardless, but you're wasting your time. So dig in, and it's through a maturity process where you're like, you know what? No, I'm going to air it all because I really want to. The only way through to become better is to be open and honest and really dig down deep, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that you touched on a really important thing, Michael, which is the like that it's the process, right? It's the system
Yeah,
that exists where it's, and I think that that's we a lot of people will say that like trust and vulnerability, that trust comes first and then vulnerability comes in. I
yeah,
actually kind of disagree, and I think that it's vulnerability first that builds trust. And I think that we have to just like, it's those little moments, it's those little decisions of like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to like, and sure, I might want the therapist to like me, but I'm going to show up. And I'm gonna like, I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna be in the space that, even though I'm bringing these things that I'm obviously here to kind of like work through, I'm still in the space in which that might get torn down. I am still in a space where that might be exposed, and that might be really uncomfortable, and I might have to be vulnerable, even if I am putting on the mask and being here. And I think that through just showing up and just being in that space, we build trust with those people who
yeah,
call us on it, and we start to see that like, if I do get called out on this thing, it's actually not the end of the world. It's just somebody appreciating that they want to see what's underneath. Not to say that that's easy at all. It's ugly and uncomfortable, and it makes you feel awkward and weird. But it's you're in. I always like to say it's like my goal all the time with my own mental health still is like, I just want to stay in the game. Like, that's
yeah.
all I'm trying to do, just trying to stay in the game. And you deciding to show up and be vulnerable in those moments, even if it's with the mask, so you're still in the game.
It's a process for sure, as you said. I want to steer us back a little bit to Jack Ride. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
that today. You are a Jack Ride ambassador. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to get involved and why it's so important for others.
Yeah. I mean, as you can tell from our conversation, like, this is something that obviously holds true, is really it's a point of, I think, excitement for both of us. The create the world you want to see. Like, I think that it's something that we both want to see. Young people know that, wow, look at all these people out there who just care about young people's mental health. They don't know me. They don't know, they might be there for completely other reasons, but they're still showing up. They're still in the game. And I think for me, like, I think like appreciating appreciating motion is something that is really important to me as well. I think that motion has played a significant role along my entrepreneurial journey. You can tell I'm just still at work, but my mental health journey. Um, Motion is so important. I think honoring motion, and the other thing too is like, I think that we are, particularly after the pandemic, there is a importance right now on reestablishing community and community mental health care, and community just showing up for one another. And I think that Jack Ride, I mean, the visuals give me goosebumps. Like, you see thousands of people out there, and they're just, it's just a wave of people showing up for one another. That's awesome. That's what we need more of. So I mean, even to be, out of far currently right now, and for all the people out there, I'll shamelessly plug my own fundraising efforts. But I unfortunately can't make it to Caledon for the actual Jack Ride, and so I'm getting in motion through every dollar donated as a minute that I go running. And so I've been, so if I raise my goal of $500, that's about 8.5 hours, give or take, of running around Halifax. So, fingers crossed that we hit that goal. But just the opportunity to like get in motion and just let people know that they are not alone, just through seeing the you out and about, posting on social media, sharing the fact that, hey, if you see me out there, that if you're a young person, like that somebody cares about you, and doesn't know you, and doesn't maybe has never bumped into you, but somebody cares about you, and I'm just one of thousands. So that always meant a lot to me. And then I think just at the end of the day, like, you guys do such important work, and it's work that like I wasn't necessarily aware of when I was young. And I think that that's something that I kind of, sometimes have a chuckle at, because I think that if I had have known what Jack.org was doing in a larger capacity, I think that maybe would have been again another one of those moments to grab a handhold. And so the more, funds that can be raised for a great organization like Jack.org, the more that brand and the great work that you guys do can get in front of young people across this country. And again, more of those handhold moments that I think are so vital.
Very cool. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back talking more about Jack Ride and youth mental health.
Hi, I'm Angelica with Jack.org. Every day, we hear from young people across the country telling us the same thing. They didn't know how to ask for help with their mental health when they needed it most. Jack Ride is changing that, but only with your support. This May, join Canada's Ride for Youth Mental Health. You can cycle with us on Ride Day or move your own way anytime throughout May. Visit jack.org/ride today and show youth they're not alone.
And we're back. Now we're going to go to a segment we like to call Fact or Fiction. And so I'm going to read a statement. You tell me whether your take on this. You need to be a pro. You need to be a pro to participate in the Jack Ride. I'm saying like a pro cyclist. True or false?
Sure.
Fact or fiction?
Sure. Michael, do you have any Tour de France medals behind you?
No, I don't think I have any
I
of
don't.
this. What's
Yeah, I don't think I do either. No, I don't think you have to be a professional at all. I think that just the act of presence and engagement and motion is plenty.
Yeah, well said. I've got some 8th place participation ribbons somewhere around.
So there you go. There's the benchmark right there.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, it really is, man. Show up. If just by being there, I think you're sending a message, as you very well put. Like, I'm here for the young people in my life, in the young people across Canada who are dealing with mental health challenges, mental illness, and we can and will do better. And the earlier we do this work, like Jack.org does across the country, peer to peer, the better our youth will be. So I want to thank you for joining us today, for all the work you do with your podcast, for being such an advocate. We know right now, and we know the federal government is very focused on men and boys' health, particularly around youth mental health with young men, because as you've, not to put words in your mouth, but really we see that young men and boys have been kind of ignored on that for a while, or we haven't been paying close enough attention, and we've seen what happens when you don't. And they need to see their mentors, their parents, and they need to see other men show vulnerability, show that it's okay to ask for help, show that it's okay to, sometimes, it is a good thing to work on your mental health, whether it be through exercise or other means. And you're doing all that and more through your podcast, through your work at Jack.org, through your work with the Jack Ride. You're an incredible advocate, and we're so grateful. If we could have more of Kyle Moore, it would be fantastic.
I appreciate it, Michael. It means a lot, and like I said, I'm a fan. So I appreciate you guys bringing me along for the ride. No pun intended. Little pun intended. Side pun intended there at the end.
You saw what I did with your last name. You had to one-up me. There you go. Okay. Thank you so much, Kyle. And thank you. I look forward to seeing all the different videos on social about you running for 8.5 hours. Better you than me. Thank you so much. Well, what an awesome guy. And it just, what an advocate to show that kind of vulnerability and share that, and to use a platform to share that and bring on others and have those conversations. That's what we do at Jack.org, right? It really is about creating those opportunities for conversations. How do I approach that? How do I start the conversation? How do I have a healthy and productive conversation around mental health? And if we do this early on, if we don't wait till crisis, what a difference it could make. And Kyle is one of those people making a difference, using his own personal life experiences to make a difference. I want to invite all of you listeners out to Jack Ride. It is on May 23rd. Now, there's an in-person event in Caledon for that day. We'll have hopefully close to 1,000 people participate, many riding bikes, some people doing 100-kilometer rides, not me. I think I'm going to go with the 10K because I am, I could barely ride a bike, but I'm going to get through. Hopefully it's mostly downhill. I don't think it is, but you can walk. And if you just want to come out for the day and volunteer, you can get involved, you can donate. But wherever you are in Canada, in the world, you can get in motion for young people and their mental health. So go to our website at Jack.org, register, join my team, Michael Braithwaite, or any team, start your own. If you are part of a cycling group, or if you are part of a spin class that says, hey, let's do a new spin class and we're going to dedicate this, we're going to raise funds and do that for Jack Ride. That's really cool too. You see what Kyle's doing. He can't be there the day of, but he's still doing his part. So can you. The more people that do this, the more we generate hope for young people's health, mental health across this country. So listen, I encourage you, go to Jack.org, see all the different offerings. If you're a parent listening and are struggling, how do I talk to my child? Look at the Be There certificate. If you're a young person looking for spaces where you could talk about mental health, there might be a chapter in your school, at high school, college, university, or you could start a chapter. If you're in the community and you have a group of community members who want to start or create a space around mental health, you can create a Jack Champions group. If you want a young person that others can relate to, other young people can relate to, come to your event, to your school. We have Jack Talk speakers, 100 of them from across the country, all young people who are being vulnerable, sharing safely their stories around mental health. We can do that as well. If you're an educator saying, hey, how do I get this into my classroom? How do I talk about this? There's free resources through our EdHub program that you can help in. They're kind of matched up with curriculum for grades 9 to 12. So there's all sorts of different resources out there. If you like this podcast, or if you want to see more of it, like it, rate it, subscribe, share, and that's how we're going to get word out, right? We're just going to grow this movement moving forward. Thanks so much for joining us on Jack Amplified, and we'll see you next time.